The winter wind screamed like a wounded animal through the streets of Ironvale, a crumbling steel town caught between the claws of progress and decay. Rain hadn't just fallen, it had clawed down from the sky for hours, relentless, cold, and sharp. Even the street lamps flickered uncertainly, their yellow halos blurred by the mist. At the wheel of an old but spotless silver sedan sat Dr. Elijah Carrow, 37, a respected maternal-fetal specialist known for his brilliance and detachment. He was the head of the Elmhurst Perinatal Institute, a man whose hands brought life into the world daily, yet whose heart hadn't truly stirred in years. He had just left a high society gala at the Ironvale Museum of Medicine, where he was honored for his work in high-risk pregnancies and pioneering surgical techniques. He'd made a speech, eloquent, rehearsed, detached. The kind that stirred donors, not souls. But here, trapped at a red light near the outskirts of the industrial district, Elijah's perfectly controlled world shuddered. He saw her, at first, just a shape, slumped near a column of the old Whitmore overpass. The rain poured off the concrete like a waterfall, pooling around her in dark puddles. She looked like discarded trash, a bundle of soaked fabric barely moving. But something in that stillness wasn't right. Elijah's surgeon instincts ignited. He pulled over without a second thought, the sound of his tires hissing through rain-slicked asphalt. He grabbed his coat from the passenger seat, slipped it on, and stepped into the storm. "Ma'am?" he called out as he jogged over, his shoes already soaked. Up close, he saw the truth, a young woman, barely more than a girl, wrapped in a tattered brown coat, hood soaked and sagging over her eyes. Her arms cradled her swollen belly like a fragile offering to the sky. She looked up slowly. Her lips were trembling. Her face was pale and drawn, her eyes wide with something worse than pain, fear. I think the baby's coming," she whispered, her voice a rasp lost in the rain. "Please. Don't let her die. Not out here." Elijah's pulse jumped. He knelt beside her, trying to shield her from the rain with his body, pulling his coat around her. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Sky," she choked. "Just Sky." "Okay, Sky. I'm Dr. Carrow. You and your baby are not going to die tonight. I promise." She winced, groaning, her hands clutching her belly. Contractions. Elijah quickly assessed the situation. She was in active labor, fast progressing. He reached for his phone with one hand while supporting her with the other. "This is Dr. Elijah Carrow," he said as soon as emergency services picked up. "I need immediate assistance at the Whitmore overpass. I have a woman in full labor. No shelter. No support. It's urgent." The operator relayed the ETA. 15 minutes. Too long. Elijah's breath fogged in the cold as he looked at Sky, whose body was beginning to tremble violently. She was soaked, and the temperature was dropping quickly. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small emergency medical kit he always carried, just in case. Gloves. Antiseptic. Gauze. "Sky," he said firmly, "we're going to do this right here. I know it's terrifying, but I've delivered hundreds of babies. You're not alone." Her breathing came in ragged waves. "No one's ever stayed," she whispered. "They all leave. They all." "I won't." The rain became a dull roar against the concrete. Elijah laid her on his coat, rolled up his sleeves, and positioned himself beside her. He talked her through each contraction, calmly, steadily, with a voice used to high-stakes surgeries but now tuned to a deeper rhythm, reassurance. "You're doing beautifully," he said, brushing wet strands from her face. She screamed once, sharp and fierce, and then the sound. A tiny, gasping cry. Elijah's hands moved quickly and expertly, clearing the infant's airways, checking reflexes, then wrapping the baby girl in the inner lining of his coat. He pressed her gently against Sky's chest. "She's perfect," he said, unable to keep the wonder out of his voice. "You did it." Sky sobbed, not from pain now, but from something older. Something broken and cracked finally letting go. The sirens came, wailing through the storm, and Elijah stayed right there, kneeling in the puddles, rain soaking his shoulders, watching a girl with nothing hold on to the only thing she'd ever had that was hers. By the time the ambulance arrived, Elijah had already clamped and tied off the cord, cleaned both mother and baby as best he could, and kept their temperature stable. "Hypothermia risk is high," he told the paramedics crisply, but his voice shook. "Infant vitals are strong. Monitor saturation levels and get them warm immediately." They loaded Sky onto the stretcher, the baby still tucked close to her chest. Elijah climbed in beside her without asking. In the bright hum of the ambulance lights, he looked down at her again. She was drifting, eyes closing, but when he reached for her hand, Her fingers curled around his like a reflex. "Stay," she whispered hoarsely. "Just stay." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He was already staying. The hospital lights were harsh, too clean, too bright, like they were trying to erase what had just happened under the overpass. But some things refused to be washed away by fluorescent glow or antiseptic scrub. Elijah Carrow stood outside Sky's room, soaked to the bone in clothes that had once belonged to a perfectly curated life. His shirt clung to his skin, his coat had been handed off to a nurse, and his shoes made soft squishing sounds as he paced. But none of it mattered. Behind that door was a young woman who had given birth on frozen concrete, cradling a baby she hadn't even been sure she'd live to meet. And now, she lay alone, eyes dull with exhaustion and trauma, drifting between sleep and the panic of a life that had offered her nothing but escape routes and pain. Elijah had delivered thousands of children. But never like this. A nurse walked past and paused. "Dr. Carrow," she said, cautious. "The girl. Sky. She's stable, vitals improving. But she keeps asking for you. Refuses to speak to anyone else." He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Thank you, Kendra. And the baby?" "Strong. She's in neonatal now. Warmed up, feeding well." "You did good, Doc." He gave her a ghost of a smile, then turned and pushed open the door. Inside, the room was dim. Sky sat propped against a mountain of pillows, her eyes open but unfocused. Her skin looked better, less blue, more human. But her expression was fragile, like a child watching a world she still wasn't convinced wouldn't hurt her again. Elijah walked in slowly, his hands visible, his movements gentle. "Hey," he said softly, standing by the edge of the bed. "How are you feeling?" Her lips curled faintly, but it wasn't a smile. "Like I got hit by a truck. Then run over again. But still here." He pulled the nearby chair closer and sat. "That's what matters." She turned her head to him, her voice suddenly sharp. "I can't stay here long." His brows furrowed. "You don't have to leave yet. You need rest. The baby needs to be monitored." "I mean, I can't stay here. In this world. This system. The nurses are kind, but I see how they look at me when they think I'm not watching." Her hands trembled in her lap. "No job. No address. No next of kin. They're already labeling me. I've seen that look 1,000 times." "You're not a label," Elijah said firmly. "You're a person. A mother. And you've just been through hell." She laughed, bitter and soft. Hell would be a promotion. At least there, the rules are clear. He didn't know what to say. Not at first. Then, almost out of nowhere, the words came. "I have a place." Sky blinked. "What?" "Behind my house. An old greenhouse. No one uses it anymore. It's been converted, has insulation, space, a heater. It was supposed to be a meditation retreat, but I never finished it. You could stay there. Until you're ready. Safe. Quiet. Warm." She stared at him like he'd just offered her the moon. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you need someone to believe you're worth helping. And I have space. That's all." Her walls slammed up instantly. "I'm not a charity case." "No," Elijah said gently. "You're not. And I'm not offering charity. I'm offering a pause. A breath. A moment to think without cold biting your fingers." The silence between them was thick, like snow waiting to fall. Then, finally, she whispered, "Just until I figure something out. That's all." He nodded. "That's all." Later that afternoon, he drove her to his home on the edge of the city, far from hospitals, traffic, and broken streetlights. His house stood tall and modern, framed by quiet woods and stone paths. But it wasn't a house that mattered. It was the greenhouse. The structure was tucked behind hedges, glass-paned and surrounded by budding ivy despite the season. Inside, the floors were wooden, the space warm from a space heater already humming, and a small bed was made up in the corner. He'd set it up in a rush, clean sheets, a portable crib, even a kettle and a box of tea she might like. She stood in the doorway for a long time, holding the baby, eyes scanning every corner. Then she stepped inside, shut the door softly behind her, and sat on the edge of the bed. "Thank you," she murmured. "But just for now." Elijah nodded from the doorway. "You tell me when it's not enough anymore. We'll figure out the rest." Days passed. Then a week. And then another. Sky never left the greenhouse except to walk in the garden behind it. Elijah didn't push. He brought food. Formula. Books. She didn't talk much, but she never turned him away. Sometimes, he saw her standing at the glass walls, the baby cradled to her chest, watching the snow fall like it was the first soft thing she'd ever seen. He tried not to intrude. But one evening, as he was bringing her dinner, she opened the door before he could knock. "I want to work," she said. He blinked. "What?" "At your clinic. I heard you mention it on the phone. I'm not a nurse or anything. But I can file papers. Clean. Talk to people. Sometimes that's the only thing that helps. Talking." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Show up Monday. 8 a.m. It's volunteer work right now, but I'll make it official when you're ready." Her lips twitched. Maybe it was a smile. At the clinic, Sky bloomed in ways Elijah hadn't expected. She was gentle with patients. Quick with mothers who looked afraid. Fierce when someone cried alone. People gravitated toward her. "Who is she?" a nurse asked him one day. "A friend," he said simply. But it was more than that. Every time he saw her cradle her child, every time he saw her walk a new mother through fear like someone who had lived it too, something inside him softened. Not pity. Not savior syndrome. Recognition. And maybe the start of something more. The greenhouse had started to feel like home, something Sky had never dared to say out loud. She still kept her things packed tight in her duffel bag, still checked the locks at night twice, sometimes 3 times, and still flinched when the wind knocked too hard against the glass walls. But she had begun to breathe again. Lily was growing stronger by the day. Her tiny giggles filled the space every morning, and Sky had even caught herself humming while folding laundry, something she hadn't done in years. At the clinic, she was no longer the quiet girl in the corner. She was Miss Sky, the one who always remembered a patient's name, who brewed the calming tea just right, who sat with frightened teenagers and whispered, "You're not broken. You're just bruised." Elijah watched all of it from the background. He never hovered, but he was always near. Some days he'd bring her lunch from the Thai place down the street, other days he'd pass her a note with a joke scribbled on it, just enough to make her roll her eyes and almost smile. He didn't ask for anything in return. Not even thanks. But even in peace, ghosts wait. And hers didn't wait long. It was a Wednesday. The sky was gray, the air still. Lily had just fallen asleep in the crib by the greenhouse window. Sky had curled up in the worn armchair Elijah had dragged in for her, a book resting open on her lap, half-read. The quiet made her feel safe. Until the knock. It wasn't a knock, really. It was too sharp, too sure of itself. A sound that had purpose behind it, authority. Sky froze. Every cell in her body tensed. She rose slowly, stepping toward the door, arms instinctively cradling Lily. When she opened it, the breath left her lungs in a single, stunned exhale. Gavin. Clean-shaven. Suit pressed. Smug as ever. And beside him, his parents. His mother clutched a designer bag against her chest like armor, and his father wore an expression too tight to be called polite. "Sky," Gavin said, voice slick with pretend familiarity, "it's been a while." Her stomach turned. "What do you want?" "You know why we're here," his father said coolly. Gavin smiled like it was all a joke. "We came to meet our daughter." "She's not your daughter," Sky said, voice firm. "You left the moment you found out I was pregnant. Your name's not on any birth certificate. You gave up your right to this conversation a long time ago." His mother sniffed. "That child carries our family's blood. That makes her ours." Sky tightened her grip around Lily, who squirmed slightly in her arms. "You don't get to waltz in and pretend you care now." Gavin's smile dropped. "We've already filed the paperwork. Custody petition. You'll be hearing from our attorney within the week." Sky felt her knees weaken. "What?" His father stepped forward, tone practiced and condescending. "You're a single woman with no income, no address of your own, and a documented history of homelessness. The court won't see you as stable." "She's with me now," a calm voice interrupted from behind them. All heads turned. Elijah stood just beyond the path, sleeves rolled up, medical ID still clipped to his pocket. He looked between them and then stepped beside Sky, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Gavin's mother narrowed her eyes. "Ah. The good doctor. So this is the savior, then?" Elijah didn't rise to the bait. "I'm the man who's been here every night since Lily was born. The man who watched this woman raise a child with nothing but her strength and love." "Love doesn't hold up in court," Gavin's father sneered. "No," Elijah said. "But marriage does." Sky blinked. "What?" Elijah glanced at her, then stepped forward. "Sky and I are engaged. And I've already begun filing for guardianship. I have standing, professionally, personally, and legally." Gavin's face flushed. "You can't be serious. You left. I stayed. That's the difference. You think we'll let this go?" His mother snapped. "You're making a mistake, doctor. She's nothing but a girl from the gutter. She'll drag you down with her." "I choose who I stand beside," Elijah said simply, "and I've made my choice." Sky's hands were trembling. Lily whimpered in her sleep. "Leave," Elijah said, his voice steely now. "Or I'll have the authorities here in 5 minutes." They stared for a moment too long, calculating, angry. Then Gavin turned, jaw tight. "This isn't over." "No," Sky said, lifting her chin. "It's just beginning." That night, she didn't speak. She sat in the corner of the greenhouse, knees pulled to her chest, watching Lily sleep in the crib. Elijah came in quietly, set tea down on the table, and waited. After a long silence, she whispered, "You didn't have to say we were engaged." "I know," he said. "But I meant it." She looked up, eyes wide. "I want to keep you safe, Sky. But more than that. I want to be part of this. You. Lily. Not as a shield. As a home." Her eyes shimmered. "Do you really think we could win?" He stepped closer, kneeling beside her. "We won the moment you stayed." And for the first time, Sky believed it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of signatures, phone calls, legal jargon, and sleepless nights. The small bubble Sky and Elijah had built, the fragile piece of warm mornings and gentle routines, was pierced, now buzzing with the tension of pending court dates and the threat of losing Lily. Elijah had immediately contacted his attorney, a brilliant but gruff woman named Clarissa Ng who wore sharp suits and spoke sharper truths. The first thing she did was tell Sky to stop running. "If you vanish," Clarissa said, not unkindly, "you'll be validating every claim Gavin's family is making. You have to face this. On your feet." Sky nodded, biting her lip until it bled. Lily remained blissfully unaware of the legal storm surrounding her. She gurgled and laughed at butterflies in the greenhouse, babbled at Elijah when he read her books, and slept curled against Sky's chest like the world had never betrayed her. But Sky felt the weight of every moment. Every time Lily clutched her finger, every kiss she pressed to her daughter's forehead, she feared it might be the last. "Do you trust me?" Elijah asked one night as they stood in the kitchen of the clinic, a dim lamp casting golden shadows on the counters. "I want to," she whispered. He stepped closer, gently cupping her face. "Then let me take the next step." She knew what he meant. Not just legal protection. Something else. Something that terrified her more than the courtroom. Love. "I'm not used to being someone's priority," she said. "I've always been someone people leave. I'm not most people." "No," she said, her voice catching, "you're not." That night, Sky didn't sleep in the armchair. She let him lead her into the guest bedroom of the main house. They lay fully clothed atop the blankets, Lily sleeping in a bassinet nearby. He didn't touch her, didn't pressure her, just held her hand as the storm raged beyond the window. And for the first time, she believed she wouldn't have to weather it alone. 3 days later, the court date arrived. The courtroom was all cold marble and colder stairs. Gavin's parents sat behind their son like royalty in exile, dressed in the sort of expensive calm that could buy any narrative. Their lawyer, a sleek man in a three-piece suit, spoke of Sky like she was a stain to be scrubbed from their family tree. "She has no financial stability. No verifiable income. She resided in a greenhouse, for heaven's sake. She built a life," Clarissa countered. "And not just for herself, but for her daughter. And now with the support of her husband, Dr. Elijah Quinn, she has a stable home, consistent health care, and a loving environment." Elijah took the stand, speaking of Sky and Lily not like assets, but like miracles. "Sky isn't just surviving," he said. "She's healing. And in doing so, she's healing others. The clinic runs better with her there. Patients linger longer in the waiting room just to talk to her. My life is better because she's in it. And Lily is not just safe. She is thriving." The judge listened, her expression unreadable. Then Gavin spoke. Smooth. Practiced. Hollow. "I just want what's best for my daughter." "You abandoned her mother," the judge said sharply. "You offered her hush money, not support. And now that this child's life is documented and loved, you appear? Why?" "She's mine," Gavin said simply. "No," Sky stood suddenly, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "She's hers. She belongs to herself. And I'm the one who's held her every night when she cried. I'm the one who sang to her when I hadn't eaten in days. I'm the one who almost died bringing her into this world. You don't get to claim her just because your name carries weight." Silence fell like snow. The judge leaned back, tapping her pen slowly against the bench. Then, she spoke. "I've seen wealth used as a weapon more times than I can count. But today I've seen something else, courage forged in fire, and a family built not on blood, but on resilience and choice. She turned to Gavin's lawyer. Petition denied. Gavin stood, mouth open. But leave this courtroom quietly, the judge said, or I'll hold you in contempt. They didn't cry until they were back in the car. Elijah driving. Sky in the passenger seat. Lily giggling in her car seat, clapping at her own reflection in the window. I can't believe it, Sky whispered. We did it. He reached across the console and took her hand. No, he said softly. You did it. At the next red light, he turned to her. So, about that courthouse marriage. Sky laughed through her tears. You want to make it official? I want to give you a ceremony. A dress. Cake. You deserve all of it. I don't need all of it. Maybe not, he smiled, but I'd still like to see you walk toward me in a room full of people who now know exactly how extraordinary you are. She was quiet for a beat. Then she said, just one condition. Name it. I get to write my own vows. 3 weeks later, under a pale blue sky in the courtyard behind the clinic, Sky walked down an aisle lined with wildflowers. Lily tossed petals ahead of her, wearing a 2 sizes too big. Elijah waited at the front, not in a tux, but in the same white coat he'd worn the night he delivered Lily into the world. It felt right. When Sky reached him, barefoot and glowing, she held his hands and read her vows aloud. I was a girl forgotten by the world. And you saw me. Not as someone to save, but someone worth standing beside. I don't promise perfection. But I promise to stay, to fight, to believe, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Elijah blinked hard, then read his. You saved me, Sky. From a life of sterile success. You reminded me why I became a doctor in the first place. Not to fix people. To love them. I don't want anything else in this life but more of these days. With you. With Lily. With our imperfect, beautiful little family. They kissed to the sound of laughter and cheers. Lily clapped and yelled, Mommy and Daddy. And in that moment, Sky knew. This wasn't a rescue story. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was something real. It was love. The sun was warm the morning the foundation's doors officially opened. Golden light streamed through the tall windows of the newly renovated wing behind Elijah's clinic, reflecting off soft, natural wood beams and fresh green walls. Vines climbed along trellises outside, while the interior smelled faintly of lavender, chamomile, and hope. A sign hung above the glass-paneled doors in hand-painted cursive. The Haven, for mothers, for healing, for home. Sky stood in the center of it all, Lily perched on her hip, her curls tied up with a little blue ribbon. Around them, staff buzzed with final preparations, placing muffins on serving trays, smoothing down the welcome table, checking name tags. But Sky wasn't thinking about details. She was thinking about how far they'd come. Exactly 1 year ago, she delivered her daughter beneath a bridge in the bitter cold, her body breaking, her soul already cracked in places she thought would never mend. And yet, here she stood now, strong, surrounded, and ready to give that same chance to others. Elijah approached from the back hallway, adjusting his collar. He still looked like the same brilliant, slightly rumpled doctor who'd stepped out of a conference to kneel beside a dying woman in the snow. But now, something in his posture had changed. Softer. More grounded. His hand brushed hers as he leaned in. Are you ready? No, she smiled, but I'm going in anyway. They both laughed. Outside, guests were arriving, donors, former patients, women from shelters, single mothers who had once sat where Sky did, afraid to even dream of better days. And when the clock struck 10, Clarissa, Elijah's no-nonsense attorney-turned-surprise board member, stepped up to the mic. I've worked with a lot of foundations, she began, but I've never seen one born from such personal fire. She gestured toward Sky. This place is her idea, her vision, her fight. Not because she read about poverty or watched it on the news. But because she lived it. And she chose not just to survive, but to turn her pain into purpose. Applause rippled through the crowd as Sky stepped forward, her heart beating faster than ever. I used to believe the world didn't want people like me, she began. Girls who slipped through the cracks. Moms who showed up bruised and broke. But then I met someone who didn't look away. He saw me. She turned to Elijah, eyes glinting. And through him, I learned to see myself. She paused, swallowing the emotion rising in her throat. The Haven isn't here to fix anyone. It's here to remind them that they were never broken. That love isn't something you have to earn by being perfect. Sometimes, all we need is a door that stays open. And someone on the other side, waiting. Tears shimmered in more than a few eyes. Even Clarissa dabbed at hers discreetly. When Sky finished, She scooped Lily into her arms and whispered, "We did it, baby girl." Lily clapped and squealed. "We have a castle now." "Close enough," Sky grinned. The months that followed were filled with stories. A teenage girl who had been living in her car found safety in one of the Haven's temporary shelters. She went on to complete her GED with the help of tutors Sky hired using private donations. A mother of two who had escaped an abusive home cried when she found a pantry stocked with fresh vegetables and formula, provided by a network Sky had helped organize. A new mom battling postpartum depression came in for counseling, expecting judgment, and found instead a quiet room with a warm blanket, a cup of peppermint tea, and a listening ear. Sky was there for all of it, not just as a figurehead, but as a presence. She held crying babies so their mothers could shower. She organized coat drives. She held workshops called Parenting When You're Terrified. She didn't speak from theory. She spoke from truth. And every evening, she went home to a small but beautiful house on the edge of town, Elijah's house, now their home. They'd transformed the once-abandoned greenhouse into a sunroom, where Lily played among potted herbs and morning glories. Sky painted the walls herself, each stroke a quiet act of reclamation. In the corner sat a rocking chair, Elijah's gift for their anniversary. Above it, framed on the wall, was a photo. Sky, wrapped in a blanket, cradling Lily in her arms, Elijah kneeling beside them, snow falling in the background. The night it all began. One day, months into the Haven's first year, Sky received a letter in the mail. It was from Gavin. She stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single sheet. No legal threats. No posturing. Just a few lines in shaky handwriting. "I was wrong. You were stronger than I ever deserved. Thank you for loving our daughter enough for both of us. I hope someday, when she's old enough, she knows it wasn't her fault I didn't stay. I hope she knows you saved her." Sky folded the letter slowly, placed it in a box marked for later, and never spoke of it again. Some things, she knew, didn't need confrontation. Some ghosts were better left as quiet acknowledgments of the road she'd outgrown. A year later, the Haven held its first reunion. The garden was in bloom again. Roses climbed the fences. A picnic blanket had been laid out beneath the old sycamore tree. Children raced through the grass, laughter echoing between the walls of a space that once held only silence. Lily, now walking and wild-haired, twirled in a skirt made from scraps of Sky's old hospital gown, a symbolic transformation they both treasured. Elijah stood beside Sky, a cup of lemonade in one hand, his other resting protectively on her back. "You did this," he said. "No," she replied, smiling at the sun above. "We did." Just then, Lily tugged at their hands and shouted, "Mommy! Daddy! Look! I made a fairy house." They walked over together, hands intertwined. It was a small structure made of twigs, moss, and pebbles, nestled beneath a tree root. But to them, it looked like a kingdom. That night, Sky stood on the porch of their home, watching fireflies dance in the yard. Elijah wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her neck. "Do you ever miss the city?" he asked. She laughed softly. "Only the noise." He tightened his hold. "Then let's make our own." Lily's giggle echoed from the hallway. "You're gonna miss the story." Sky turned and smiled. "No," she said, "I think we're just getting to the best part."